Looks like you're ready to roll. Okay, we're going to start with you, and we're going to get moving here on Senate Bill, starting with Senate Bill 367. And you've got a group of sponsor panelists that I'm going to call up to join you. We've got Lee Richardson, Tyler Huff, and Lindsey Thompson. And the three of you can come up here and their mouths. You can play lawyer up there at the podium, or you can sit at the table, whatever you prefer. And then you've got the time you need, and then we'll take the three witnesses and then open up the Q&A. Senator Mounts, the floor is yours.
Chairman, colleagues, thank you for giving me the opportunity to stand. It was one of those days where I just need to stand a little bit and keep things moving. It's a busy day. It's an honor to be here to present Senate Bill 367. Great news. Everyone is very intimately familiar with this issue. It's a bill we discussed for a lengthy time last session. It didn't make it through. We approved it. It was approved by the Senate, but it didn't make it through. It ran out of time. And so this legislation would authorize a hunting promotion in the southern Delmarva Peninsula. And I've got a news report that surmises all that goes into this. And I'd like to play that and then turn the microphone over to our witnesses. Thank you, Chairman. Let me hit play. It's not working. Okay.
Get you some support here. See if we can figure it out.
Those were supposed to be my fireworks and the glitz, but it didn't quite fire off. Well, the video is not necessary for the testimony. The witnesses can provide the testimony. And so I'll just turn it over. We don't need to do the video right now. That'd be fine. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Okay, then we're going to go. You got a sequence you want to, who wants to go first?
Okay, my name is Lee Richardson. Appreciate the time today. I'll start with in August of 2018, we had a tri-county meeting on the lower shore, had about 50 farmers, landowners, and Farm Bureau, Maryland Department of Fish and Wildlife to discuss the deer crop damage issue. At the end of the day, no solutions were really developed. So later in 2018, a group of farmers on the three lower shores came up with the idea to hatch the doe harvest challenge to incentivize hunters to harvest more does in the last rifle hunting season. So how the contest works is why I'm here today is I've been a big part of it since the beginning. We started in 2019, had it in 2020, then COVID hit. We came back in 23 and 24. A hunter harvests a doe, and then when they bring it to us to check in, we check to make sure they followed all the Maryland state laws as far as harvesting the deer, and then we give them a ticket for a drawing. We do that for the 3 days. Each county is kept separate of the 4 lower counties, and they can bring in several does. You know, if they kill more than one, we don't have much of that. Mostly everybody kills one, but the goal was to cut the doe population down a little bit. And so we have a drawing at the end of the 3 days and have 10 winners, and they win money. So that's the incentive to get them out there, even in bad weather. We were hoping to spark more hunting in the late season.
Okay, thank you, sir. I apologize. Did you tell us your name at the front end? I
Yeah.
might have missed that.
Yeah, Lee Richardson.
Okay, Lee. Okay, next up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, rest of the EEE Committee. For the record, my name is Tyler Huff. I am the Director of Government Relations for Maryland Farm Bureau. I'm here today on behalf of the nearly 9,500 Farm Bureau families in Maryland to testify in support of Senate Bill 367. Currently, Maryland farmers take a brunt of the state's overpopulated deer herd through crop damage and other concerns. According to the USDA National Agriculture Service statistics, Maryland farmers face up to $10 million in our estimated economic loss a year. 77% of that loss comes from deer. Crop damage causes great financial hardship on the farmers, as I'm sure Mr. Richardson and others can speak to. I know Lindsay has experience with their property on the shore, and causes in an industry that is tight on margins more concern, more financial issues, and you can never fully or guess how much damage is going to come. In some cases, we've seen farmers lose entire fields due to crop damage. Unfortunately, recreational hunting is not the solution. At the moment, there are many hunters that are out there chasing bucks, chasing the trophy animals. Unfortunately, most of the overpopulation comes from your doe herd. Having challenges like the Doe Harvest Challenge on the lower shore helps incentivize the hunters to take those does, which are needed to manage the overpopulation, and also helps with the crop damage issues that Maryland farmers face. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Thompson?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Lindsay Thompson, here today on behalf of the Maryland Grain Producers Association. As Tyler mentioned and Mr. Richardson mentioned, this program was really hatched as an idea to incentivize and encourage farmers and hunters to harvest additional does during that 3-day shotgun season. This bill is very specific to the authorization under section 10-404 that would allow for this raffle program, only the existing program. So we're not expanding this across the entire state, but allowing this very successful program to continue. As Tyler mentioned, farmers experience over $10 million in crop damage, and I never quite understood the full brunt of that until my husband and I started farming on our own in 2020. And I just finished up our taxes for the year. And on our very small land hold, we have about 212 acres, which for grain purposes is very small. We lost over $13,000 in input cost to crop damage. We had almost 10 acres that were completely not able to be harvested due to crop damage. So this program incentivizes the farmers and the hunters to get out there and hunt, and also gives them an outlet for that deer. One of the primary impediments that we hear to harvesting more does is that, what do I do with them? My family only needs 1 or 2 in the freezer. This program actually allows them to donate those deer, and the Maryland Grain Producers pays for the processing of that deer for them to be donated to the Maryland Food Bank. So we're simply asking for you to pass a bill that you passed out of the Senate last year and got caught on the last calendar before sine die in the House. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that's our panel. Any questions for Senator Mouts or the 3 sponsor panelists? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 367. Thank you, Senator Mouts. Sorry for the misfire on the video, but I think we get the issue. We're going to next go to Senator Bailey on Senate Bill 507. Senator Bailey, come up. You are the lone witness on this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senator Jack Bailey, representing St. Mary's and Calvert County District 29 for the record. This afternoon, I'm going to talk to you about Senate Bill 507. This would create a non-resident license fee for a special Chesapeake Bay and coastal sport fishing boat license. This license is one of the very few where residents and non-residents pay the same fee. So if you have you've seen the sticker on people's boats, or you possibly have gone fishing on someone's boat, the owner of the boat pays one fee in Maryland, $50, and everybody that gets on that boat pays, they don't have to pay a thing, they're covered. Well, that's one thing if you're a resident, but fishing and hunting in many different states, the one thing is, it's a lot different when you're a non-resident. But in Maryland, we don't look at it that way with this. We just look at it, you buy the $150 stamp, and that's the way that it works. This legislation would increase this fee for non-residents to $100. And is that a big issue? Well, I checked with the Department of Natural Resources, and the fact is Last year, they sold 42,000 of these boat decals. Almost 10,000 of them were sold to non-residents. So we're talking a quarter of the stamps that we sell for these boats are to non-residents. This committee is aware of the importance of financing the conservation and management of our state's natural resources. This is particularly true when we consider that the federal government gives Maryland $3 for every $1 the state raises in license revenue. I believe, but by making this license consistent with other licenses and having different fees for residents and non-residents, we can support our natural resources without imposing any additional burdens on Marylanders. I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 507. I stand for any questions.
Okay, any questions for Senator Bailey on Senate Bill 507? Yes, Senator Simonetti.
Thank you for your testimony. This session, seem to be focusing on fees. We're getting a ton of them coming in our committee. How much is this going to raise with the higher fees?
It's on the physical note, Senator, and I don't have it. I think it's 10,000, almost 10,000 people by $50.
Okay, I can look up. So around $500,000.
I think they actually consider that some people might not buy it. So I think it's around 350 to 400,000 actually. But this is not a fee against any Marylander. This is only a fee against non-residents.
And do you know who's buying these? I mean, is it like family members? I mean, where are these people coming from? Out of state?
Out of state.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Senator Hester.
Thank you. Senator Bailey, I just wanted to thank you for your leadership in this area. Would it be fair to say that when Marylanders go out of state, we're paying higher fees in other states than than the local citizens in those states might be paying? So this is kind of like par for the course.
A lot of these states don't even have a Chesapeake Bay. And the Maryland residents, we're always dealing with the fact that we're paying for the Chesapeake Bay to keep the Chesapeake Bay clean and protect its resources. I think when people come here, it is clearly fair. When we go to other states, non-residents, as you know, Senator, we always pay higher fees for non-residents. The fact, I'll have to say, I was really surprised when I realized that residents and non-residents for these boat licenses, and they can take as many people as they want on a daily basis. Any people that come, this is one fee for one boat for the whole year, and they could take as many people on a day as they can, and they pay us $50. I just think that we should protect Maryland residents, Maryland natural resources, and protect the taxes that we as Marylanders pay.
Okay, any questions for the sponsor, Senator Bailey? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 507, and you get to stay there. We're going to next move to Senate Bill 508, Senator Bailey, and we'll bring, do you want Lindsey Thompson up at the witness stand? She's signed up favorable. And I don't know if she's still here. There you are. Why don't you come up? You're the only witness in person, so if that's okay, Senator Bailey.
That's fine.
Okay. Senator Bailey, again,
We're going to try this. This is going to be new. We're both on the same side this year.
Yeah, okay, you're both signed up favorable, and it's Senate Bill 508.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Jack Bailey representing St. Mary's and Calvert County, District 29 for the record. Senate Bill 507 would increase the non-resident Sika Deer stamp fee from $25 to $100. Now, as you all remember, and what we did last year, we never had a Sika deer stamp. So we really had no idea of the numbers of residents versus non-residents and the number of people that actually came to our state to hunt Sika deer. But the one thing that we always had was I have a lot of people from my area that would come over to the Eastern Shore to hunt Sika deer, because obviously we don't have Sika deer in Southern Maryland. They only exist in a few counties on the Eastern Shore. But I do a lot of pro hunting things for youth. And at those events, all the people would come up and they'd be like, Senator, we can't park. we can't access, we can't do anything. And they started sending me pictures of the parking lots. And the fact is, there was nobody with Maryland license plates that were actually hunting. They were all from different states, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and they said there's nowhere for us to hunt even when we go to the Eastern Shore. And it's just not fair that these are Maryland, this is a Maryland issue. So I said to DNR, I said, well, could you tell us how many stamps you sold? So this is the first year, last year, we were able to capture that. They sold 12,737 people bought the Seek a Deer stamp. Over 3,000 of them, or almost 25%, were non-residents. Now, you know, as many of you know, my son Taft, we went elk hunting this year out west, and the amount of fees that we pay to go out west, right, to go hunt an elk is very significant. I'm here to tell you there's only one place in the entire United States that has a free range herd of Seek a Deer. It is an absolute trophy animal. There's one place, Eastern Shore of Maryland. And the fact is, when a quarter of the people are coming here to hunt this animal that is clearly a trophy exotic animal that people come to hunt, non-residents should have a significant higher fee than residents. They're not going to not come when we raise the fee. And we're not raising the fee on Marylanders. Now, under Pittman Robinson, the PR Act, same thing, a quarter, you know, one fee, we get 3 times that money. So the fact is, even though we're only looking at about 3,000 people, it's still a significant impact when you figure the Pittman Robinson Act money, and it'll provide additional revenue to DNR, and it can be reinvested into all the state's natural resources. It's important to note that this legislation will have no effect on Maryland hunters. As outlined in the bill, residents will continue to only pay the $10 stamp fee that we established last year. I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 508. I'll stand for your questions, but also turn it over to Lindsay.
Okay, Ms. Thompson, and our 2-minute timer is not working right now. So, but to the extent you could keep it close to the 2 minutes, that we might use our watches and that
I
kind of thing.
promise.
So in any event, it's
I'll
you-
self-police myself.
correct,
here.
self-regulate 2
Okay.
minutes. Okay.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Lindsay Thompson here today on behalf of Maryland grain producers in support of Senator Bailey's bill. As you heard Senator Bailey say, this bill would raise the fee to $100 for Seek a Deer only on non-residents. Fun fact, Senator Bailey already told you that this is the only place that you can harvest a wild Seek a Deer. Seek a Deer has been added to what is called the Super Slam for sportsmen, including things like moose and elk, mule deer, etc. So this is very much a destination. Also, to Senator Bailey's point, Maryland is among the lowest of all non-resident hunting fees in the country. If you wanted to harvest a moose in Maine, it's going to cost you almost $700 for that non-resident stamp. If you want to harvest an elk in Colorado, $585 for that stamp. So I certainly think that charging $100 for this destination animal to be harvested, they are non-native and invasive, and our farmers experience significant damage from them on an annual basis. And we hope that this increase in the license fees will be reinvested back into habitat and feeding of these animals, as well as management techniques for the farmers who are experiencing significant losses. And I would argue, and Senator Bailey is not advocating for this, but I think you could do more than $100 and they would still come. So we urge your favorable report.
Sorry. Thank you, Lindsay. Any questions for the sponsor or Ms. Thompson? Seeing none, that completes the hearing on this bill. Next up is Senator
Thank you.
Folden. We are waiting on Senator Folden, but we are done with Senator Bailey. You want to take Senator Gallion? Are you ready to go? Okay, why don't we take Senator Gallion because he's in the room? Are your people here? Okay, Senator Gallion, Senate Bill 392.
Okay. Senator Gallion, you are the only witness, so this is, okay, well, we've got actually, while we're waiting on Senator Gallion, why don't we take Senator Alfred, because waiting on Fulton, correct. Okay, Senator Elfrith, you're gonna be next up in Senate Bill 547, and the floor is yours. We do have several witnesses signed up, not part of a official sponsor panel, but why don't you lead off and then we'll bring a panel of favorables, unless you want to bring anybody up with you now.
If you wouldn't mind if I bring
Sure.
HSUS up with me?
Yeah,
Thank
come
you.
on up.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you for taking me. We are starting a voting session in B&T in 5 minutes, so I will be brief. Thank you. My first time in EE and Triple E this year, to present Senate Bill 547, Traveling Animal Acts Protections. I don't often talk about the experience, my work experience prior to coming to the Senate, but folks may know I had the privilege of working for the National Aquarium in Baltimore for a number of years and am incredibly well versed on the importance of bringing conservation education to our communities. People can't care about wildlife, they can't care about animals, they can't care about that habitat if they don't have an interaction or the ability to interact in one way or another with those habitats and that wildlife. At the same time, I think we can all agree there is a very bright line between conservation education and animal exploitation. And that bright line is exactly what this bill seeks to create in Maryland law, to make sure that we are protecting not just the wildlife, but also the folks who visit zoos and traveling animal acts. So the bill is very basic, Mr. Chair. It makes sure that we are protecting against the cruel and abusive conditions of prolonged confinement of these animals in traveling shows. We want to make sure that training practices that commonly use whips, sticks, ropes, bullhooks, or electric prods are outlawed here in Maryland. We want to make sure that we are putting public health and safety first when it comes to these traveling animal acts. We have data here that 12.4% of captive elephants have tested positive for the human strain of TB, tuberculosis. Many continue to perform and provide rides to children despite this. Wild animals may respond to chronic stress and trauma with dangerous behaviors. An example of this, not too long ago, right here in Landover, Maryland in 2004, a tiger escaped its enclosure at the Universal Circus and roamed the fairgrounds where multiple elementary schools were visiting with students. There's a place for zoos and aquariums, but we want to make sure that, again, that wildlife and human life are protected against exploitation and dangerous conditions. So, Mr. Chair, Senate Bill 547, in passing this, hopefully we will join a number of other states that provide these protections against these traveling acts that exploit animals and put human life at risk. And with that, if I could pass it to.
Okay, or since you have to get back to committee, you want to maybe take questions on the front end, or do you want us to go through the panel?
I think I could stay for a few more minutes.
Okay, so let's go down the panel and tell us who you are. And our clock is not working, so you're gonna have to self-regulate at about 2 minutes, okay?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Bevan Dangle, and I'm the State Director for the Humane Society of the United States here in Maryland. We want to thank the sponsor for bringing this bill, and certainly with her expertise in where this line should fall. We're very grateful to have her as our sponsor here. I am aware there's no opposition, so I will try to use even less than my 2 minutes. But the bill is very simple. It takes some of the most dangerous wild animals, which, as the sponsor said, are the animals that you see the most abusive training techniques used on, the ones that thrive the least in these environments, and the ones that pose the biggest danger to our public. Big cats, elephants, bears, and non-human primates. We usually say monkeys. Those are the animals that this bill prohibits from participating in traveling acts. We are incredibly happy to see the market is sort of ahead of Maryland on this issue. Soul Circus was one of the first circuses to voluntarily stop using animals completely. Ringling just followed suit. We were thrilled to have them in Baltimore on their sort of new tour, their animal-free tour. But it is important to understand that there are still outfits that travel through Maryland, and we have many of those in our written testimony, that do come through with these animals or have the potential to come through with these animals. And there's also a fear that as the larger established players stop using these animals, that it opens the door to some of these other smaller, less well-regulated entities trying to fill that void, even though the market has been so clear and your constituents have been so clear in their preferences. So we see this as codifying where the state is, where the state wants to be, and we urge a favorable report.
Yes.
Before we go on to the others, just to correct the record, Ms. Bevan Dangle, there is unfavorable testimony from the National Zoological, hold on, let me get the name of it again. I had it up. The Zoological Association of America, the executive director, Dr. Kelly George. So it's more than just a human, and there's lengthy testimony with his concerns. So I just want to correct the record on that.
Thank you. I
Thank you.
apologize.
No, all good.
Okay,
Thank you,
let's
Mr.
go.
Chair.
And the next witness actually shares your last name. I don't know if there's a connection or relationship, but put the mic, young lady in the middle, or
Good evening, Chair,
there,
Vice Chair.
actually put that mic a little closer because we're beaming out
Sorry.
on the internet. Okay.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Alyssa Dangle, and I'm here to testify in support of Senate Bill 547. Circus acts can be amazing. There can be acrobats, there can be ribbons, and exotic animals as well. However, those animals can be kept in inhumane conditions no creature should ever be put in. This is so cruel towards poor animals and can also endanger humans. These circus acts don't always follow rules to stop public safety risks and have hurt people because of this. This bill will help protect both animals and humans. Most exotic animal exhibitors have violated the Federal Animal Welfare Act. This means that they haven't given animals proper veterinary care, food, or decent shelter. Often in these circus acts, animals have none of those. The animals eat and sleep, they live in horrible, cramped conditions. Signs of extreme stress are often seen on these animals that barely see other creatures like them, forced to live with no social interactions and able to live like they should. Without expressing natural and normal behaviors for them. They also live in unsanitary conditions, and without proper veterinary care, they fall prone to illness. These animals are impossible to return to the wild, as they have no idea how to act or how to survive in nature. The best thing to do is to stop this cruelty before circus acts harm and destroy the lives of more animals. This bill will stop that. While these circus acts are obviously harmful and cruel to animals, they can also harm people. Animals like elephants, big cats, and primates have and can run loose and injure people, especially children. These animals can also spread many diseases like tuberculosis and herpes B because of the lack of veterinary care. When so many animals are suffering and dying and humans are also being hurt, this bill is necessary. Please vote in support of Senate Bill 547. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we go to our, this at the end and tell us who you are?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Kim Fullerton. I'm a legislative liaison for the Maryland State Bar Association. I'm also an animal law professor at the University of Maryland School of Law, and I'm also the American Bar Association's Wildlife Subcommittee Chair. But today I'm just here for the MSBA. And as my colleagues mentioned, circuses that use animals and travel, they are a relic of the past. The big tops that we've seen like Barnum and Bailey, the biggest stakeholders in that industry, they folded not because of the law, but because of public opinion. They were shamed into a compliance that was rooted in the public, not in the law. And this is such a prime example of where the law needs to catch up to what society deems is moral and ethical and correct. We've seen the bigger actors that typically fill this space eliminate wild animals, institute new standards, condemn this behavior. We need this law to reflect those standards. Maryland has spoken. We have already instituted a local ban in Montgomery County. Also across the world, we're seeing similar legislation. At least 45 countries, England, Mexico, Greece, Italy, Singapore, just to name a few. The other reason that we truly do need this legislation is because of bad actors. There has been a race to the bottom to fill that void and wring that last dollar. They're just scraping the bottom of the barrel of a dying industry. I also hearing that there is opposition, I do want to touch base on what I expect that opposition is probably going to touch on, which is, oh, we're regulated by the Animal Welfare Act. Well, the Animal Welfare Act is toothless. It is primarily to regulate animal testing. It does apply to traveling exhibits, but there's only 100 inspectors for millions of animals. So how truly effective is it? Thank you.
You heard our unofficial time.
We appreciate
Real
that.
time is all broke, so if you hear this big loud. Okay, by the way, is Lisa Radoff, she's not here today? I don't see her back
She was
there.
unable to make it. She gives her
Okay.
apologies.
Okay, so this.
Mr. Chair, could I address the vice chair's
Sure,
comment earlier? So
absolutely.
thank you. So there are kind of basically two camps, the AZA, the Association of Zoos and Aquariums that I was a member of through the National Aquarium, and the Maryland Zoo is also a member. And then there's the ZAA, Madam Vice Chair, which has many other zoos, not many aquariums. I would also just note, I didn't want to reference a certain documentary on Netflix we might have all watched during the pandemic, but I think that kind of brought to light a lot of the animal welfare concerns that this bill tries to address, and make sure, again, conservation education is very important, but we need to have a bright line between that and animal exploitation and the risk to public and human safety. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Gallion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple quick questions. So it's my understanding now that the larger traveling circuses are already not doing this. So would so the smaller acts, is there a thought that this will put them out of business? Is that kind of what you're thinking there?
I don't think our intent is to put anybody out of business. Our intent is to make sure if a traveling act is traveling with a large, dangerous wild animal, these animals are incredibly difficult to tame. That's going to put the general public at risk, and also because of the traveling nature, it leads to greater misuse and abuse of those animals.
Okay. And the other question, a few years back, I went to one of these at the local community college, and what I noticed there, and this brings up the point you brought about human safety. So if you're moving away from the animals, it's going to be more human-based acrobatics and whatnot. And one of the performers were doing this thing that was like a large sphere, and there was several of them in there, like on these little mopeds or motorcycles. To me, that seems much more dangerous and hazardous towards humans than these mostly trained animals. Has there been any thought that now if we're going in that direction, that humans are gonna keep trying these more and more hazardous acts and potentially be injured because of them?
It's an interesting question, Senator. The bill doesn't speak to that. I think the world is moving in that direction generally with Cirque du Soleil and other acrobatic acts, but the bill's very specific just to animal welfare.
Any additional questions for Senator Elfreth or the panel? Senator Simonary.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And look, I love animals too, and I've sponsored or co-sponsored a lot of them. I'm just trying to get the scope. So this past year we went down Ocean City area, and they had a place you can stay, and it's had horses and horse shows, and they also have in our county where they'll bring in horses or ponies and do shows and things like that on a temporary basis. I didn't notice horse was in this list, and one, could you explain that? Is this just trying to target a certain industry, or if you could?
So this bill really targets the animals that are the hardest to humanely and safely keep in these traveling environments. So the bill specifically includes only bears, large cats, elephants, non-human primates, monkeys, and then, and elephants, which I said. And the thought here is you've got 4-H, you have a lot of areas where you have livestock, or even, some reptile shows or some bird of prey shows. Those animals are, by comparison to this list, easier to humanely house, treat, and safely take places, which also, to Senator Gallion's point, these traveling acts can still use other less dangerous animals. It's only saying that these specific species can no longer be used.
So it would not impact those.
No, I think there's a definite line here between animals that have been, domesticated over thousands of years, including horses and including goats and sheep in the 4-H and animals that we see at the local farm show, compared to what is a wild animal that is incredibly difficult to keep safely to itself and when it interacts with humans.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for the sponsor or the panel? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 547. We're gonna next go to Senator Folden, who's in the House here. So Senator Folden, why don't you come up and then we'll take Senator Quarterman after that. Senator Folden, we're on Senate Bill 611 and you are the lone witness. And so you can take the time you need to present Senate Bill 611.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, for the record, William Folden, Senator for District 4. The bill before you today is SB 611, and it regards the bow hunting and for hunters to be able to openly carry their handgun while they are out in the woods endangering, for their deer management region A. So that would be areas of Frederick and eastern Washington County. And then the rest is already a part of this type of regulation, the rest of Western Maryland. And this bill is just simply put during deer hunting season that would allow these hunters to carry for self-defense, a pistol, a handgun on their person with a barrel no longer than 6 inches. Because in these regions of the state, there's a large coyote population as well as black bear. So this is something that would be helpful for them to be able to protect themselves, because when they go in and they would hunt and they would engage a deer and they would then go to remove that animal from the woods to take it back for harvesting, there's a lot of blood involved, and that scent attracts a lot of wild animals. And in an effort to be able to protect themselves, we're just looking to expand this region from all of Western Maryland and halfway through Washington County to include the eastern half of Washington County and Frederick County. And the Frederick County delegation moved the bill. I believe it was unanimous. And I know that Washington County also voted their delegation voted in support of this legislation as well. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions, and I would ask for a favorable report.
Okay, questions for Senator Folden, Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got an nonverbal body language here. Senator Lewis Young, did you vote for this? Because you said it was unanimous from the Frederick County delegation.
She may not have voted for it.
Okay, so the record can reflect non-verbally again.
But it wasn't a party line vote. There was others
Okay.
that did vote. So I apologize, Senator Lewis Young.
Okay, okay. Just 2 quick questions. One, my understanding is that folks are already authorized to do this. Can you just explain what's allowed today and why this bill is needed? And then the second question, if it's okay to ask 2 at once, did DNR take a position? I don't see any testimony in our folders.
Yeah, so this bill currently in the western part of the state is allowable, that they're allowed to openly carry. The problem is that currently in deer management region A, it is not allowable for them to actually openly carry in the woods their handgun. So if they were approached by DNR, they would then be in violation of the CCW or permitting or that type of, we don't want to cause any issues for them to be in violation of any law that they would not be allowed to carry for self-defense in that capacity. That's the long and short of it, Senator. I mean,
Okay.
and I don't know why DNR, if they remain silent or whatnot, this is language that just came straight from what is already permitted in the western region of the state.
Permitted, bad pun.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you,
it is. It
Mr.
was.
Chair.
Good
Okay.
catch.
Any additional questions for the sponsor, Senator Folden? Oh, okay, Senator Hester.
Sorry, I was just trying to clarify. So you're saying that, I thought I heard you say that it was already eligible in Washington County?
In the western half of Washington County is my understanding.
Okay, and do you know, is that because of the bear that are out there?
It's the bear and coyote population in that part of the state, the western part of the state.
And so do we have bear in Carroll County? Or sorry, Frederick County?
Yes, ma'am. We've had
Okay.
bear attacks we have one that was very vicious, actually right at the edge of the city, where a grandmother was attacked with her grandchildren, getting them out of the car in her own driveway.
Wow, okay, thank you.
Okay, Senator Carrozza, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the bill. I just want to confirm this is a local bill.
It is a local bill for Frederick and Washington County. Thank you.
You.
Okay, Additional questions for the sponsor? Okay, thank you, Senator Fulton. That
Thank you all. Thank
concludes
you, Mr. Chairman.
Bill hearing on Senate Bill 547. We're going to go next to Senator Quarterman. See you back there. We're on Senate Bill 553. If you want to come on up, and we've got Richard Tabito as part of your sponsor panel, and then we've got after that 2 additional witnesses who signed up favorable with amendments. But let's take the 2 of you first, and then we'll go to those other 2 additional witnesses. So Senator Quarterman, again, Senate Bill 553.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, members of the Education, Energy and Environment Committee. For the record, Senator Paul Quarterman, District 2, representing Washington and Frederick counties. Thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 553. This bill was heard last year in this committee, subsequently passed unanimously from the committee, as well as the Senate floor. The bill would alter the composition of the Maryland Zero Emissions Electronic Vehicle Infrastructure Council to include a representative of a light-duty plug-in electrical drive vehicle manufacturer and a representative of a heavy-duty plug-in electronic drive vehicle manufacturer in order to diversify and further encompass more facets of this industry. District 2 is home to Volvo North America's Hagerstown Powertrain production facility, which employs nearly 2,000 people. They are the last major automotive manufacturer in our state. Volvo and Mack trucks are North American industry leaders in zero emissions. In 2020, the Volvo Group made a global commitment to having 100% of its product sales being fossil-free by 2040, including a near-term goal of 35% of product sales being zero emission by 2030. The Hagerstown plant plays a key role in this transition through the manufacturing of all modular power boxes for the Volvo VNR Electric and Mack LR Electric Class 8 trucks. With the goal of zero emissions, it's important to have a voice from some of our industry leaders within this council to further our efforts to achieve those goals. Additionally, last year, the Department of General Services had requested to be included on this. Finally, the bill extends the reporting deadline when the council must provide a report to the governor. As previously mentioned, the bill did pass unanimously in both the committee and on the floor. It was the last few days of the session. Inadvertently, we believe somehow there was a couple groups that got struck from the statute. So we actually issued an amendment to kind of reset the bill. There was a Baltimore Electric Vehicle Initiative, the Maryland Automobile Dealers Association, and a representative of the Retail Electric Supplier Company that somehow got struck last year. So that was not the intent. When we filed the bill again this year, that's when we heard from the individuals. So like I said, we submitted an amendment to kind of reset the bill and include the light and heavy duty truck along with DGS. There are some other individuals I know that are interested in joining the council as well. I'll leave that up to the wisdom of the committee. I'm sure you'll hear from some of them here today. But again, thank you for consideration and respectfully ask for a favorable report.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Senator. Mr. Tabito, why don't you go next? And again, we're sort of the clock's not working, so we're sort of trusting you to keep it to around 2 minutes, okay? Even though we have if you hear a big buzzer, that's actually our clock going off, but we're good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Richard Tabito here on behalf of Volvo Group North America. As Senator Quarterman mentioned, we are the last major vehicle manufacturer in the state of Maryland. There are 1,500 UAW workers in Hagerstown. If you see a Volvo 18-wheeler anywhere in the United States, you should be proud to know that the engine, the transmission, and the axles were built here in the state of Maryland. Last year, we had a number of bills relating to zero emission heavy-duty trucks under the leadership of Senator Augustine. Maryland will join California's Advanced Clean Truck Rule beginning in model year 2027. Governor Moore also last year had a bill that provided rebates for the purchase of zero emission Class 8 trucks because they are about 3 times more expensive than their diesel counterparts. This bill here is pretty much maybe not the completion, but another part of that journey towards zero emission Class 8 adoption, whereby the ZVIC talks about subjects like energy infrastructure. And for so long, the conversation has been dominated around light duty passenger vehicles. But now that we are thinking about Class 8 or medium and heavy duty trucks, we believe that there should be someone on the council that can speak to that subject specifically and through their experience. So We hope that you would pass this bill. If so, we would like to make application to the governor's office to have a Volvo representative on the council. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for the senator or our lone witness? Favorable? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Okay, we do have two witnesses signed up favorable with amendments. I'm going to call up Bruce Beriano and Emil Nussbaum. And why don't you two come up? And you've signed up again favorable with amendments. So Mr. Who wants to go first? Okay, Mr. Nussbaum, why don't you lead off and tell us what kind of amendments you'd like to put on this bill?
Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. It's also a personal pleasure to have the opportunity to testify in front of my own Senator Kagan today as well. And my name's Emil Nussbaum, and I'm the VP of Strategy, Government and Regulatory Affairs with the Automotive Recyclers Association. We're the national trade association representing over 1,000 automotive dismantler and recyclers throughout the country, as well as 30 direct members in Maryland. And there's approximately 60 automotive dismantling and recycling facilities within Maryland. And they represent large corporate entities as well as multi-generational family businesses. I'm here to respectfully request that automotive dismantlers and recyclers be included on the Zero Emission Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Council. And this is due mainly because over the last 100 years, automotive recyclers have really been the drivers of a circular economy that have allowed automotive vehicles to be one of the most recycled consumer products and the reuse and the remanufacture of parts. 96% of vehicles that reach their end of life go to automotive recycling facilities and enter the recycling infrastructure in the country, and 84% of those vehicles are reused or repurposed by weight. And so as we transition to electric vehicles and with regards to the council, it's important that we consider the entire vehicle life cycle, especially because automotive recyclers have been responsible for the safe and responsible processing of all end-of-life vehicles. And with regards to electric vehicles, the reuse, repurposing, and recycling of those electric vehicle traction batteries is becoming increasingly important, especially if we want to get to the point where electric vehicles are able to proliferate in the state due to the need to have recycled original equipment manufacturer parts that come from an auto recycling facility as well. And so auto recyclers play a pivotal role and therefore should be included on the committee because they create a used parts market, reduce the cost of ownership for vehicles, and this will help promote electrification amongst transportation as well. And ARA has been recognized as a national leader on electric vehicle policy, having been invited to join the public-private partnership with Liebridge, as well as been active with many other state working groups on this matter as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Beriano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Bruce Beriano. I'm here on behalf of LKQ Corporation, which has 11 significant corporate locations here throughout the state of Maryland and throughout the United States and also the world. They are a member of Mr. Nussbaum's organization, and they have extensive experience and possession of ordered recycled parts that are from electric cars. They're very knowledgeable in this area, and we strongly support the request for someone from the auto recycling and dismantling community to be a member of this commission. We testified on the House side, and the appearance was very favorable in that regard. It would enhance the knowledge of such an entity on the commission. Such a person would enhance the knowledge and the experience and the ability to do the work of the commission. We would ask for a favorable report with that amendment, which we will submit to the committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for either Mr. Nussbaum or Mr. Beriano? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing.
Thank you
on
very
Senate
much.
Bill
Thank you. 553.
Next, we're going to go to Senator Gallion. We've got two bills. We'll start with Senate Bill 392. Senator Gallion, you're the only witness, and so take the time you need to present Senate Bill 392.
Here for a change. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and fellow committee members. For the record, Senator Jason Gallion, representing District 35, Cecil and Hartford counties, to introduce Senate Bill 392. Has the quickest bill hearing of the year. Agricultural land, adversarial foreign governments, restrictions on property interest. This legislation would prohibit adversarial foreign governments from purchasing, acquiring, leasing, or holding any property interest in agricultural land in the state of Maryland. Adversarial foreign governments can be defined as a state-controlled enterprise or government of a country that the U.S. Secretary of Commerce has determined to be a foreign adversary. In this legislation, a state-controlled enterprise will be a business enterprise in which a foreign government possesses more than 50% of the ownership interest or directs the business and affairs of the enterprise without the requirement or consent of any other person. Currently, 24 other states ban some or all foreign ownership of farmland. They include Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Idaho, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, Virginia, and Wisconsin. The intent of this legislation is to make certain that we are safeguarding our farmland and food supply from foreign adversaries that don't have our best interests at heart. Unfortunately, on a federal level, the tracking data of these purchases has fallen behind, and there doesn't seem to be any urgency to provide accurate results of these purchases. According to a GAO, or U.S. Government Accounting Office report detailing the findings of its investigation, the Department of Agriculture, the USDA, has failed to consistently share timely data on foreign investments in U.S. ag land as required under the 1978 Agricultural Foreign Investment Disclosure Act. Further, Pentagon officials told investigators, according to the report, that the USDA needs to regularly provide more up-to-date and specific data. The GAO investigation concluded that USDA collects the Agriculture Foreign Investment Disclosure Act data on paper forms filed with county or federal offices, but that its process is, quote, unclear and challenging to implement, end quote. And USDA also has no plans and timelines to create an online database, despite Congress mandating the agency create one by the year 2025. Another point I would like to make, for new and young farmers that are just getting into or wanting to get into the business of agriculture, access to farm ground to either own or lease is a major obstacle right up there with the need to access capital. Maryland farmers should not have to compete for farm ground with adversarial foreign governments. We are proposing 2 amendments to the legislation that will create a more narrowly tailored product. The first is from Maryland Farm Bureau, will exempt property that is used for agricultural research and development or the testing, development, or production of crop production inputs for sale or relate to farmers, including seeds, plants, pesticides, soil amendments, biologicals, and fertilizers. The second amendment is proposed from the Maryland Realtors, would exclude real estate licensees from any damages or harm arising from the enforcement under this law. So I believe with that, at least when I checked the testimony earlier, there's no opposition to that. So to the bill after these amendments get through. So thank you for your time, and I respectfully ask for favorable passage of SB 392. Take any questions.
I'll kick off if I could, Senator Gallion. I find this fascinating, actually. Foreign policy changes all the time. And there are countries that we have good relationships with until we don't, or bad relationships until there's a new leader. How could this legislation, assuming with the Realtors amendments and stuff, how would this legislation acknowledge and accommodate that?
Well, so it works through, it's a lot's left up to the U.S. Department of Commerce, because they come up with this list, but also a lot of the technicalities would be sorted out by the Attorney General, honestly. But just appreciate the question. I just wanted to list the ones that are included now on that list. So you have the People's Republic of China, the Republic of Cuba, Islamic Republic of Iran, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which is North Korea, the Russian Federation, and the Venezuelan Maduro. So those are the ones on there right now. So we tried to really narrowly focus this, and by making it adversarial foreign governments, I think that tailors it pretty well. I mean, some other states may do like all foreign, limit all foreign government ownership. We didn't want to go that far. We wanted to, this, I think other versions of this bill may have been out in previous years across the street. I don't know if we've ever had this actually on the Senate side, but just working with committee staff, we wanted to really narrowly focus this, something that was workable. Also thought it was important to work with Farm Bureau and with the realtors so we could have a product that everybody was okay with, that we could move forward.
Senator Louis Young.
Been any discussion around how those countries that you mentioned might reciprocate, because we have large commercial interests in many of those companies where American corporations own property, and I'm just concerned about what the ramifications could be.
I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know. And I think if you look in Farm Bureau's favorable with amendment testimony, they bring up one good point that I didn't bring up in my remarks. That is, we're so close to our nation's capital. That's another reason for this extra layer of protection. I believe we don't want our folks that could wish to do us harm being able to buy ground that is cheaper per acre than the grounds that you mentioned. Because it's zoned at the ag level. That's kind of I think an important thing for us to keep in mind.
So if I could follow up, sure. Did you consider perhaps then just restricting this to a certain radius within the nation's capital?
No, I look at what the 24 other states have done, and I really think this should be for the whole state.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. And thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill forward. The more that I have learned about national adversaries and cybersecurity, the more worried I get. And I know that, agriculture is on a list of kind of critical infrastructure. And so, I think this is probably a really good bill. My question is, thinking about Virginia, which, borders the nation's capital, could you get back to the committee and tell us like when they did this and if there's been any negative repercussions? And the same thing with Minnesota, because Minnesota is a really progressive state. And those are two states I'd really be curious in some follow-up for if it's not too much work.
Sure, and we'll even add in Pennsylvania since they're our neighbors to the north.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. I know ours is tailored similar to North Carolina's. So that's who this would be the closest to out of those states. So yes, we will definitely follow up that information for you, Senator.
I see no other questions. Thank you very much, Senator Gallion. That completes the testimony on Senate Bill 392. And next up, you have Senate Bill 533, Senator Gallion.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Once again, good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and fellow committee members. Again, for the record, Senator Jason Gallion representing District 35 to introduce Senate Bill 533, Fishing and Hunting Licenses and Trout Stamps, Complementary Licenses and Stamp Exemption, Veterans Determined to be Unemployable. This legislation would authorize DNR to issue a lifetime complimentary angler's license, a lifetime complimentary Chesapeake Bay and coastal sport fishing license, and or a lifetime complimentary hunting license to number one, a Maryland resident who certifies that the resident is an American veteran who the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs determines is unemployable, or number two, an out-of-state person who certifies that the person is an American veteran who the VA determines is unemployable and whose state of residence extends similar privileges to out-of-state persons. Currently, DNR is authorized to give these licenses to a Maryland resident who certifies that the resident is a former prisoner of war or a 100% service-connected disabled American veteran, or an out-of-state person who certifies that the person is a former prisoner of war or a 100% service-connected disabled American veteran whose state of residence extends similar privileges to former prisoners of war or 100% service-connected disabled American veterans of this state. This legislation would clarify the difference between types of service-connected disabled veterans applying for the complimentary license, and DNR feels they can easily accommodate the change with existing resources. I respectfully ask the committee for a favorable report on Senate Bill 533.
I see no questions for you, so I think that completes the hearing, Senator Gallion, on Senate Bill 533. Back to the chairman.
Okay, we're gonna go next to Senate Bill 384, Senator Lewis Young. And we've got one, well, you're the lone favorable witness. We do have one virtual witness signed up unfavorable. And that's the extent of the testimony. So Senator Lewis Young, you take the time you need to present Senate Bill 384, and then we'll go to that one virtual witness.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to my colleagues and Madam Vice Chair. If I could give a subtitle to this bill, Carbon Capture Opportunity Program, I would designate it another tool in the toolbox. As we all know, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas that's a major contributor to global warming. Innovative ways to reduce emissions are urgently needed to curb the trajectory of global warming. What this bill does is it establishes a carbon capture opportunity program in the Maryland Energy Administration to provide support to nonprofit and for-profit businesses that are engaged in carbon capture programs or research. And research is important too, because in fact, the University of Maryland is involved in research of this nature right now. Let me define carbon capture and storage. It's the process of capturing carbon dioxide, either from the air or before it is emitted, and storing it in someplace else. Where is the someplace else? Trees, rocks, soil, water, deep, deep water, or management structures such as cement. This is a critical decarbonization solution for hard to abate industries such as steel, cement, refineries, iron, steel, chemicals, and power generation. A 2019 report that modeled scenarios to achieve the Paris Agreement goals found that carbon capture is expected to contribute 27% of the needed emission reductions for these industries. An important use of carbon capture technology is in cement plants. Capturing carbon directly as it's emitted is one of the most productive methods of carbon capture, particularly compared to pulling it out of the air. Now, I cite cement plants for two reasons. One, because that's probably the most relevant example in our state. And secondly, because I have an example right in my district. When I was knocking on doors in 2022, I was knocking doors in a very low income but diversified community. And a woman invited me in to see all the refuse from a nearby cement plant. She said, despite the fact that I clean my windows and my curtains and my doors daily, I cannot keep this dust out. And I'm forced to keep my windows closed on the warmest days in the summer. I reported it to MDE numerous times, nothing happened. But finally, when we had the secretary for MDE out in Frederick within visual distance of this cement plant, I pointed it out to her. And so this could be a mitigating opportunity for a situation like that. We all know that many of these industries are located next to our most economically challenged communities. There's another reason for supporting this program. There's money out there to fund it. The bipartisan infrastructure law authorized federal Department of Energy to deploy $12 billion in new carbon management funding over 5 years. So for fiscal years 2022 through 2026, the Department of Energy at the federal level allocated $2.5 billion to develop 6 integrated carbon capture and storage demonstration projects and $1 billion for large-scale pilot projects to accelerate the deployment of technologies to capture and store CO2 emissions generated by fossil energy power plants and industrial facilities. Also, you might recall that the Inflation Reduction Act extended credits through January of 2033, and this credit can be realized for 12 years after the carbon capture equipment is placed in service. Now, I recognize there is opposition to this bill, so I'd like to address that. The opposition says funds should go into proven solutions like renewables and abating emissions. Well, certainly this scenario is ideal. I agree. However, even if we could transition to zero emissions today, there's still an excess of CO2 in our atmosphere, causing the current harmful conditions. Carbon credits do nothing to address this, whereas removals are actually trying to flatten the curve and hopefully bring levels down. Moreover, not sure the particular programs that I cited, one in particular, would necessarily give credit to renewables. That's another pot of money. So in conclusion, the key concept behind carbon dioxide removal is that it can help offset the emissions of really hard to abate sectors, recognizing that the technology doesn't exist yet to effectively wean these activities off fossil fuels. I'm not positioning that this should be used as an alternative to reduction. I want to be clear about that. And finally, the ambition of our climate targets are such that we're not in a position that we can do either or. Sometimes we just need to do both. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope you will find this concept of importance and consideration.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Any questions for the sponsor, Senator Lewis Young? Okay, don't see any questions. We do have one witness signed up unfavorable and virtual, Dante Swinton. Dante Swinton, we do see you, and you've got, again, we don't have a clock working on the screen here, but you really basically get 2 minutes to give your unfavorable testimony, okay?
Okay, I'll try to squeeze it in. Let me know if I go over. Okay, so my name is Dante Swinton. I'm the executive director of Our Zero Waste Future. We stand vehemently against SB 0834 or 384, sorry. The state should spend absolutely no taxpayer dollars on the creation or facilitation of carbon capture projects. Carbon capture is merely a distraction from the actual policy needed to fight climate change. Carbon capture technology requires additional power to run the carbon capture and storage equipment, or CCS, as mentioned before, which could be achieved in a couple of ways. Either you produce more power from the plant that has the carbon capture equipment attached, or you have to build an entirely new power plant to power the carbon capture. With the former, you are not capturing any additional pollutants that are created by the more power that's needed to produce to run the equipment, which includes sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and particulate matter, similar to what the senator was referencing with the cement plant. With the latter, it's usually a natural gas plant, and that plant not having its emissions captures, which means more carbon, more methane emissions, more nitrogen oxide. Carbon capture equipment could be run by renewables, but it would make more sense to use those renewables for the actual replacement of the fossil fuel power plant itself. Proponents of carbon capture claim that CCS equipment can capture up to 95% of the carbon emitted from the target plant. However, projects across North America and beyond have fallen short well of this goal. There are about 5,500 miles of CO2 pipelines in the country right now. According to Princeton, for CCS to have any sort of serious impact on the climate, that number must increase by 12-fold. There are multiple issues with CO2 pipelines. They have high pressures. They can be disrupted by internal and external conditions. My final comment for today is in February of 2020, after weeks of heavy rains in Mississippi left the land subsidence, a carbon dioxide pipeline in near the community of Satartia ruptured, which caused over 46 residents to be hospitalized temporarily. And there are even folks who were exposed to the carbon dioxide for lengthy periods who were essentially found walking around the community like zombies when the emergency responders came to take them to the hospital. They were not informed, the emergency responders, on how to respond to a carbon dioxide release like that. And the company Denbury was held responsible by the Pipeline Health and Safety Administration for disregarding that aspect. So I urge the Senate, the House, and any folks that are interested potentially in finding ways to minimize carbon pollution and fight climate change, not to focus on CCS projects. We can do this a lot better, much more sustainably, without putting Marylanders at risk of any sort of CO2 pipeline build out and ruptures, similar to what happened in Satartia. I'm happy to take any questions.
Hey, any questions for our witness, Mr. Swinton? Okay, I see none. That concludes our bill hearing on Senate Bill 384, which brings us to our final bill of the day. Senator Brooks, Senate Bill 586. And Senator, you've designated 6 folks to be on your sponsor panel. Do have 6 seats, and so that works out. I see County Executive Jessica Fitzwater here, and County Executive Fitzwater, why don't you come up? I've got Michael Fleming, also from Frederick County, Tom Coe, Sarah Laird, Craig Matthews, and finally Celeste Flynn. That is the 6 folks signed up as part of your sponsor panel. And then we do have some additional witnesses after that. But we're going to start with you, Senator Brooks, on Senate Bill 586, and then we'll go through the panel, and then we'll take some Q&A, and then we'll go to some additional witnesses. Okay?
All right, thanks, Chair. Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of my EEE Committee. Thanks for the opportunity to present to you SB 586. For the record, I'm Senator Ben Brooks, representing the 10th Legislative District in Baltimore County. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on public safety corrugated steel tubing for fuel gas pipeline systems. Requirements and prohibitions. Yeah. The purpose of this bill is to prohibit the distribution, sale, or transfer of corrugated stainless steel tubing that does not meet the LC 1027 testing criteria for the ANSI LC1 standard as described by the International Code and the International Fuel Gas Code. Corrugated steel tubing, better known as CSST, is a flexible pipe that provides natural gas, propane in many homes and businesses. While this tubing is easy to install, it has many risks regarding its integrity and the high amounts of electric current. For example, if a house was struck by lightning, the current from the lightning could create perforation in the tubing and cause a gas leak and or fire. What makes a CSST related fire uniquely destructive is that it converts the tubing into a flamethrower that is hidden in the walls, the floors, and the ceiling. The resulting fire cannot easily be extinguished, thus putting the residents and the firefighters in immense danger. Unfortunately, the risk posed by the CSST fires have already brought harm to our communities in Maryland. 2 firefighters, Frederick County Battalion Chief Josh Laird and Howard County Department of Fire and Rescue Service Lieutenant Nathan Flynn, died in the line of duty responding to a CSST-related house fires triggered by a lightning strike. Before 2022, it was legal to sell CSST in Maryland that had no protection against lightning threats. But the Flynn and Laird Act prohibited the sale of non-arc resistant jacketed CSST. Arc-resistant CSST has a protective jacket that prevents electric arcs from forming on the tubes, which causes proliferation that ignites the gas inside. The bill was huge step forward in reducing the likelihood of fires and death related to CSST malfunctions. However, even arc-resistant CSST has a flaw. Its jacket is not the most resistant, oftentimes protecting against lightning. When arc-resistant CSST was first developed, the International Code Council Evaluation Services tested the arc CSST jacket with 4.5 coulombs. That's just a coulomb would be considered a standard unit of electric charge of electricity current, thus yielding the testing criteria called LC 1024. This standard is sufficient at providing some protection against lightning threats. Currently, a lightning strike is between 20 to 28 coulombs of current, which means that the most arc-resistant CSST for sale in Maryland cannot withstand this charge. To resolve this, the International Code Council also developed the LC 1027 testing criteria. And the subject was this subject arcs resistant CSST jackets up to 36 coulombs of current. This kind of CSST is strong and safer than the previous iteration and ensures that the CSST related fires is less likely to happen during a lightning strike or a household electrical system fault. Senate Bill 586 will ensure that all CSST sold in Maryland will be able to better withstand threats from lightning strikes. It is time to finish the work we started in 2022 and ensure that Maryland firefighters are safe in the line of duty while protecting our constituents and our residents to the best of their ability. And for that reason, Chair, I request a favorable report.
Okay, thank you, Senator Brooks. Let's go through all the witnesses and then we'll take Q&A, and we're going to start with our County Executive from Frederick, County Executive Fitzwater. Why don't you lead off?
Thank you so much, Chairman Feldman and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee for the opportunity to be here today and to speak in support of SB 586. For the record, I am Frederick County Executive Jessica Fitzwater, and I truly want to thank Senator Brooks for sponsoring this important bill. I would also like to thank the co-sponsors, including Frederick Senator Karen Lewis Young. So I am here to speak on the importance of increasing safety standards for corrugated stainless steel tubing, or CSST. As you already heard from Senator Brooks, and you will hear from this incredible panel, the current testing requirements for CSST are inadequate and are putting the lives of our residents and first responders at risk. I am here today because this is my top legislative priority for the 2024 General Assembly. Since 2018, the state of Maryland has experienced 3 fatalities because of fires caused by lightning-induced failure of CSST. This issue became deeply personal to Frederick County when a CSST-related fire in 2021 resulted in the line of duty death of Frederick County Battalion Chief Josh Laird. Today, you will hear from his widow, Sarah Laird, as well as numerous other witnesses who have experience or expertise on this critical issue. As local and state government, we have a responsibility to our constituents, including our first responders, to adopt laws and policies that ensure the safety of our communities. Adopting stronger safety standards for the energy systems in our buildings is simply one way we can uphold that responsibility to our communities. Thank you for your consideration of SB 586. I urge the committee to advance this bill with a favorable report. And I'll turn it over to our fire chief from Frederick County.
Excellent. Okay, sir.
Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today in support of Senate Bill 586. My name is Tom Coe, and I serve as the fire chief for the Frederick County Division of Fire and Rescue Services. The danger of corrugated stainless steel tubing is not common knowledge to the general public. When high levels of electricity are introduced into a structure by a direct or indirect lightning strike, CSST commonly fails when an arc is created with nearby metal objects. The ensuing gas-fed fire has caused millions of dollars of property loss, but moreover, those fires have cost lives. In Frederick County alone, we have experienced 2 fire fatalities within the last 6 years from lightning strikes in a structure that contains CSST. In 2018, a civilian in a residential fire south of Urbana died after lightning struck the residence. The CSST failed and the occupant was trapped by the ensuing fire. Then on August 11th, 2021, this issue hit close to home when Battalion Chief Josh Laird, a 22-year veteran of our organization, died in the line of duty fighting a fire in a residence which had been struck by lightning and experienced a failure of the CSST. In 2022, the Maryland legislature took an amazing step forward to protect both our citizens and first responders by passing the Flynn-Laird Act. Time and experience has demonstrated that we still have work to do to protect our citizens from the dangers of CSST. Senate Bill 586 identifies CSST constructed to pass the LC 1027 testing criteria as the new standard in Maryland. CSST that is built to pass the LC 1027 testing criteria can take a larger electrical insult than other models on the market. Additionally, this bill makes the sale, transfer, or distribution of non-compliant CSST illegal and associates a $1,000 civil penalty. For the safety of all Marylanders, as well as our firefighters who respond to these fires, I urge a favorable report on Senate Bill 586. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's just go down the row, down the table. Tell us who you are.
Chairman Feldman, Madam Vice Secretary, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Sarah Laird, and I am the widow of Battalion Chief Josh Laird. For the past 2.5 years since my husband's death, my life has been unimaginably hard. I'm now a single mother, raising 2 teen daughters while we all try to ride the waves of grief. We've been to multiple therapists and grief programs. Our wounds are deep. They will heal, but the scars will remain forever. I am here today because my husband's death was avoidable, as was Lieutenant Nathan Flynn. Not because either of them did anything wrong. My husband didn't have a chance while fighting the CSST fire. He was only a few feet inside the door when the entire floor collapsed, trapping him in the basement in a raging inferno. He remained calm and professional right up to his last audible radio transmission, which was tell my family I love them. My greatest fear now is that another wife and family will join us in our living hell. Along with grieving, I have spent the last 2.5 years educating myself and researching CSST fires. To date, I have documented 22 CSST fires in the state of Maryland in the past 5 years. However, I promise you that is only the tip of the iceberg, as there is no existing mechanism to track these fires. I am confident that the actual number is much higher. I find it unimaginable that given the data and the actual fires over the past 15+ years, this industry has been allowed to continue to operate largely unchecked. It seems everyone keeps turning a blind eye to science and to data, allowing the CSST industry to spend more money on misinformation, false testimony by so-called experts and lobbyists instead of producing safer products. I don't want you to have to attend a funeral and tell the family you had a chance to save their loved one. I urge you to do the right thing for the firefighters and all citizens of Maryland by providing a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Laird. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Craig Matthews. I'm a captain with Howard County Fire and Rescue Services, and I'm currently assigned to the Fire Investigation Division. I had the unfortunate responsibility to investigate the 2018 fire that resulted in the death of Lieutenant Nathan Flynn in Clarksville, Maryland. Through that 8-day investigation, we determined that a lightning had struck a tree to the rear of the residence, traveling by unearthing the soil, creating a 6-inch trench from the tree to the underground propane tank, then transferring the energy to inside of the structure where it caused the CSST to arc to another piece of metallic, ultimately simultaneously igniting the fugitive gas from the CSST line. This CSST line is weaved through concealed spaces within our floors and our walls, which make it troublesome for firefighters as well as the residents because it delays the report to 911 that there is a fire in the residence, because oftentimes this is burning in concealed spaces, which delays the notification to the emergency services. And during that time, it is also burning away the structural members of that flooring system, often just leaving a false impression that the floor is stable to our firefighters, and they're ultimately stepping foot onto the plywood floor and they're falling right through because of the fire that's burning below it. Over the course of those 8 days, we conducted field testing, and in a vertical, orienting the whole of the CSST in a vertical position, we applied an open flame to the fugitive gas. We were able to get a 14-inch torch flame out of that hole from that fugitive escaping gas. I brought a piece with me today. The yellow stuff is the old stuff that is now currently illegal in the state of Maryland. This is the worst stuff. So we got a little bit better a couple of years ago by introducing new legislation. Here is that CSST with a piece that I brought from a Howard County house fire, where you can see that there is an arc hole formed in this. We are seeing this time and time and time again, creating devastating challenges to our residents of our great state, as well as it's also affecting them because most times the insurance is not covering all of the expenses of the damages that they're incurring, as well as all of the memories that they're losing with photographs or anything else that they memorialized over the years. So I urge you for a favorable report.
Okay, thank you, sir. Let's go down to the final two witnesses and you can tell us who you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I'm Karen McMahon and I'm a Maryland fire victim. On July 9th, 2021, that will be a date that will be engraved in my head for the rest of my life, along with my husband and our 4 young children. The day began like any other with loving chaos, but it ended in numbing pain. As I stood outside of our home watching firemen struggle to find the fire, which is typical in CSST fires, smoke poured from the roof. And although I deny this could actually be happening to me, it in fact was. You see, at that time, I had been a volunteer at a local fire department for over 20 years. I had also been a fire investigator for over 14 years. And if that wasn't enough knowledge and education, my husband is also a career and volunteer fireman for over 20 years. But somehow, despite our combined 40 years of public safety, we had failed our own family. Our home was less than 5 years old. How could this have happened to us, and how did we fail them? Trust is how. We trusted the contractors and the manufacturers to produce the safest and most effective products, both requested by us and as required by law. And even though CSST had been deemed unsafe in the fire industry for many years before then, we trusted. We trusted that the manufacturers of CSST had done the right thing by taking extra fire safety precautions and using higher testing standards, and that CSST was no longer actually being used. However, that was not true as I stood there and witnessed the CSST that was installed in our home. I watched my own home burn down and all my trust was shattered. I had witnessed this scene so many times before in my own career, but I had never been the victim, and I was now a new statistic. It was an out-of-body experience as I watched each phase of the fire rage through our house. I knew with each broken window, each new hole in the floor, and the collapse of the floor, which again did happen at my home, that more and more of our life was being destroyed. Fire does not discriminate, as I learned, and it will gut you to the core, financially and mentally, which is why I will always work to educate others of the danger of CSST. A lightning strike struck over 150 feet away from our house and destroyed our lives within 30 minutes. We must do better for the citizens of the state of Maryland who deserve to continue to have trust in the construction and safety of their home. And I ask that by passing Senate Bill 586.
Sir, tell us who you are.
Yeah, sure. My name is Michael Fleming. I'm the Chief Plumbing and Gas Inspector for Frederick County, Maryland. I am also an ICC Residential Combo Inspector, which basically means I'm approved to inspect all trades in any residential home within my county. I am here because I wanted to go over the difference between the LC 1027 standard versus the LC 1024 standard. I've submitted a copy to everybody. I hope they have a copy. The big difference in this is on the LC 1027 under the scope on 1.2. When you read the bottom sentence, it says the listing criteria is for the evaluation of the product from indirect lightning only and the effect of direct lightning strikes. Okay. This is what's been happening. CSST, the 1024 standard only protects against 4.5 coulombs of energy, where the 1027 standard protects up to 36 coulombs of energy. Big difference. As we build more and more homes across the state of Maryland, lightning strikes become more evident in homes. That's about all.
Okay, thank you to the entire panel and Senator Brooks for bringing the bill. We'll take some questions now. Vice Chair Kagan, you can start off.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, thank you for being firefighters, volunteer and career. Ms. Laird, I'm so sorry, all of you. Thank you for sharing your story. County Executive Fitzwater, it's always nice to have you here. Senator Brooks, thank you for bringing the bill. I just have a couple of quick questions. This would be prospective in terms of future construction and all that. I read the bill. Would it cover renovations or any other ways of a home that you've just bought within 5 years that you don't even know has this stuff? So that's one question. And then actually, why don't you do that one first? And then I have one more question.
Okay, Madam Vice Chair, yeah, it would be prospective. I'll double check and see whether or not that would be an amendment that we would accept on existing renovations.
Yeah,
Okay.
I believe that that's actually already in the bill. So that should be covered already.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
May not sell, offer for sale, transfer, or distribute.
I think there was a reference to the bill that we passed 2 years ago, the Flynn-Laird Act. And so we're changing some wording in that via this legislation. It spells out in the Flynn-Laird Act that any renovations that were over 50% of the structure would also have to comply with this, regardless of whether the gas system in the house was part of the renovation or not.
Part of the gobbledygook in reading bills that are sometimes hard. So thank you for that, County Executive Fitzwater. The other question is $1,000. How many other states have legislation like this? And is the penalty similar to what has been done in other states? And I'm just wondering, is $1,000 the right number? And is that a consideration?
Okay. Go ahead.
I can just tell you that since we passed the Flynn-Laird Act 2 years ago, making this not usable in Maryland, you can go into every Lowe's, every Home Depot in the state of Maryland, and this is still on the shelf. And I have called and I have gone to the store and I have called corporate and I have wasted many hours of my life trying to get them to take this off. And so we didn't ban the sale of it, we banned the use of it. And so, yes, I think you are going to need to require that kind of a fine to be able to make this enforceable to get this stuff off the shelves.
Anybody else want to what?
Too low is where I was going.
I was told that that was the highest we could go.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I would note, because I'm thinking actually Senator Augustine had a bill dealing with a similar number. This is not to exceed 1,000. So that doesn't even mean, I mean, it could be far less than 1,000. That's the max. Okay, we'll take a look at that. And again, we've had some other legislation here talking about how $1,000 penalty does not disincentivize anybody from doing anything. So yes, Senator Gallion, who himself has history with in the volunteer firefighter world.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Senator, for bringing this bill. Nathan Flynn was volunteer at Susquehanna Hose Company, Havergrace fellow firefighter there in the Hartford County system. So appreciate that. I just had a quick question because I'm still learning about this. With new construction, you have sprinklers in. I know I have in my house. So for our friends here from the fire service, can you kind of explain how that works with, you have the sprinklers there. Tell us how the interaction there with that, if you could explain that to me. I'm sorry, I'm not asking this in the best way, but if
I'm going to provide my personal side from this.
yes.
Okay,
'Cause you
my
were-
home was sprinklered.
Okay, so could you just kind of explain
And,
how all that works together?
As Captain I'm sorry, Captain Matthews had said that a lot of times the fire burns in void spaces, which is not where the sprinklers are actually situated. The sprinklers are designed to protect lives and give them enough time to escape a home. And so when the fire is burning in the void spaces, they don't actually activate at that time. In my particular home, for example, there was no power. I live in a rural area. And so when lightning struck, I lost power. Subsequently, my sprinkler system would never have activated, even if it could have. However, I will let you expand on how the sprinklers play into the role.
Yeah, just as we talked about, all this is weaved in through the concealed spaces. So once a fire occurs within that concealed space, essentially the sprinkler head that would essentially extinguish the fire is below that space. So the fire is now burning above it, and then you have the subfloor above that that's protecting it from the sprinklers above that. So oftentimes we see where we might lose power because of the lightning strike caused a power outage. So it's not going to activate the pumps in these residential structures to actually extinguish the fire, even once it gets beyond that concealed space. As well as the fire could also melt the water piping inside of that concealed space, causing that piping to fail. And then there's no sprinkler activation at that point either.
Thank you. I really appreciate that explanation for the benefit of the entire community. Very supportive of this bill because all this stuff plays together for public safety. So thank you again, Senator.
Okay, any additional questions for the sponsor for this panel? Senator Hester.
Thank you. I just wanted to say, thank you all for coming, Ms. Laird. I'm so sorry. And Captain Matthews, it's good to see you. It's a really important bill. And I'm just really, truly sorry that you had to come here again and that we didn't get it right the first time.
Okay, any additional questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you to the entire panel for this, again, very important piece of legislation. We do have one other witness signed up favorable. Karen McMahon. Is Karen McMahon here? I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yep. I spoke when there was an open seat, so I'm sorry if I spoke out of.
Oh, that's okay. It's all good. It's all good. So you're Karen. Yeah, you're Karen McMahon. Okay, I apologize.
That's okay.
We do have two unfavorable witnesses signed up. Jonathan Sargent. Is Mr. Sargent here? And also Ashley Andrus. Those are two witnesses signed up unfavorable. Are they here? I'm going to call one more time. Okay, there you are. So again, we've got Jonathan Sargent and Ashley Andrus signed up unfavorable. And Miss Andrus, go to the stand. Again, is Mr. Sargent here or just not testifying? Or
unfortunately, he had a health incident this morning.
Gotcha. Okay, we got it. Okay, Miss Andrus, why don't you have a seat, and then you're signed up again unfavorable, and you will be the final witness, live witness on this bill. So it's all yours.
My name is Ashley Andrus, and I'm here on behalf of WardFlex corrugated stainless steel tubing. The principal concern with Senate Bill 586 revolves around the issue of whether it matters that all equipment and piping systems installed within homes be referenced to a national consensus standard recognized by the state fuel gas code, or be allowed based on what is called a listing criteria. The use of a listing criteria is intended for emerging products that are not currently covered by a national consensus standard. The biggest difference between a consensus standard and the listing criteria is in the development process. The listing criteria can be developed by an organization other than a standard development organization. ICC Evaluation Services is such a non-SDO. The LC 1027 is a listing criteria that was developed at the behest of a single CSST manufacturer specifically for their special arc-resistant CSST design without any other considerations. Furthermore, the ICC development process is not a public consensus process, such as the ones used for ANSI sanctioned standards, and without a balanced technical committee and with limited or no public input. It would create a state-sanctioned monopoly for one patented product and one manufacturer of CSST, as LC 1027 was developed specifically for just that unique product design and not for the generic variety of CSST. Protection against direct lightning strikes can only be met by the installation of a certified lightning protection system. To date, the state of Maryland has not deemed such protection as a necessity for Maryland homeowners. In summary, this issue has been litigated with the signing of House Bill 1052 in 2022, establishing the requirement for arc-resistant CSST in accordance with its national consensus standard, ANSI CSA LC1. Adoption of LC 1027 in lieu of LC1 will create numerous potential conflicts as well as unwarranted interference by the state of Maryland into flow of commerce. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, the witness for testimony. Any questions for our witness? Okay, seeing none, thank you. And that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 586, and that concludes our bill hearings for today. And it is shy of 3 o'clock, and so enjoy the rest of your afternoon.